we're gonna. Okay. Okay. Thank y'all for meeting with me this afternoon. I have called you all to be a part of our walkthrough committee. And what our walkthrough committee will do today is look at our current walkthrough tools and kind of see where we can make some improvements to best fit the needs of our campus. So let me give you this stack of papers. Before we dive into all of that, I just want to go through what we're going to talk about today. So we are going to look at our current campus walkthrough forms, talk about what works and what doesn't work. We'll look at some other sample walkthrough forms and review those and kind of see what components we like of those. Then we will identify any needs that our campus needs to have reflected on a walkthrough form, and make sure that those are in line with our instructional goals. And then we will brainstorm some of those must-have components and discuss creating a new form that better reflects what we want to see in our classrooms. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. So before we look at our current walkthrough tool, I just want to talk about what our campus looks like. So with the new year coming up, we know we have 24 employees. 18 of those are going to be veterans for us, and we'll have 6 new total ones. 2 of those will be district employees already, but they are moving to a new grade level, so they still will need some support. We have 4 new kindergarten teachers, 2 who don't have any kindergarten experience. 1 is fresh out of college and 1 has only taught 2nd grade. And then we have 2 others who have some kindergarten experience or have a pretty hefty tool belt already. So they will just need support with learning what we expect from them at Carthage Primary. So let's look at our current walkthrough tool. It's the one that's pulled off of DMAC. And this is what Ms. Watson and Ms. Shelton you're using currently when you do those walkthroughs. So thinking about that, just because I don't have any experience with that one, Ms. Roka, you may have experience with that DMAC one. I just want you to think about it and then tell me what are some things on this form that when you fill it out work and what things are not currently working.
Well, for me, the domain 1, which is the planning domain, that's part of the T-test tool that we use to evaluate teachers. But when we go in and do a walkthrough, we are not able to see that domain happening right then. We don't see the planning part. We just see that snippet of 15 minutes of the instruction and the learning environment. And so for me, I put stuff in there usually, but it's difficult. I mean, I'm trying to pull and I do go back and access their lesson plans and things like that. But in that 15 snippet, I don't get to see or discuss with them or talk to them about the planning piece. So to me, that's kind of a wasted domain for the walkthrough portion. Mm-hmm. For an observation portion, that's different.
But the same thing is run with me. At the beginning of the year, I started printing out lesson plans so I would know when I went in, but that just came too monotonous to print them out first when we're kind of crunched for time doing all of our walkthroughs.
Okay. What about that instruction and learning environment piece?
To me, that's all valid. We see that when we go into the classroom, and for 15 minutes, we can get a good idea on the majority of those indicators, how they're doing.
Now, when you fill this out, it's more of like the scripting still?
We make notes as well. Yes, we make notes on those. What we saw as far as communication with the students or the actual lesson, the content knowledge of the teacher of the lesson, things that we might see might need to be adjusted, or pose the question to them, how could you adjust this lesson?
There is a piece in DMAC where you can script. In the beginning, I scripted in my notebook just because that's what I was used to doing. Mm-hmm. That was before I realized how easy the scripting piece was in DMAC. If my computer was up and working and all that stuff, then I could take it with me to do a walkthrough. And then you can go into that piece and click on one of your comments and assign it to whatever indicator it needed to go under. So it's a little bit easier to use in that perspective if everything's working properly and all that stuff. So
And going with the T-test document is so important, the rubric, to be involved with that, especially
Right.
when you're, I know it's just a walkthrough, but just to have the verbiage on there, to be able to see how often you see it. And, it's here, but it's not in depth.
And the one thing that in DMAC, I mean, I know this is a printed version, but in DMAC, when you're writing this, if you click on standards and alignment within the piece that you're writing in, it will pull up that rubric for you, and it will pull up each of the proficient, the accomplished, the distinguished, and all of that. And then you can actually cut and paste from that the verbiage that is being used. So it's
like
not
that.
here, but you can use it in the system itself.
And we do that.
We do that a lot,
That's
yeah,
important.
and put it in the evidence.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to our first other sample walkthrough form. So this is coming straight from Bluebonnet Learning, which is what we're moving to next year with curriculum-wise, K through 5. This is the coach's observation tool. I couldn't find the administrator one, but I thought this was good enough, at least for us to kind of get some ideas off of. So one thing that I noticed directly on this one was the checklist, or like the check boxes where you can just say very quickly, yes, you see it, or no, you don't. But I'll give you a few seconds to look at it, and then we'll talk through that one.
And are we thinking we're going to use the administrator walkthrough in conjunction with our T-test walkthroughs?
We'll have to have 6. That's what our transition plan for Bluebonnet is suggesting or stating. And so we'll do 6 of them per teacher.
So to me, this is completely different than this.
Mm-hmm.
This is more, I mean, both of these are observations of the teacher, but this is her overall teaching methods and how well she does according to the T-test. This is how well are you implementing Bluebonnet, the curriculum. These are the things that you have to do for Bluebonnet to be effective. And I don't know that it's necessarily aligned to T-test. I haven't looked that closely at it. But we do know that Bluebonnet is highly aligned to our TEKS. And so, from that perspective, it is aligned, I guess. But this is just to see how they are growing in the Bluebonnet system itself. And so to me, this is much easier to accomplish than this because it is a checklist.
And if the teacher is implementing Bluebonnet with fidelity.
Right. So I think this is something that, no, you don't have to be trained in T-test to be able to do the Bluebonnet. You just have to know the system of Bluebonnet and how it's supposed to be implemented.
Right.
So I think they're both very valuable, but I do think this one will be a lot easier to accomplish than this.
Okay. The next one is a learning walk form, and this is one that we pulled to do the current learning walks we were doing with instructional coach on campus. So just take a moment to look at those kind of components of what was on there.
I think each of these serves a different purpose. And so I like this one because it's not judgmental. I don't feel like, because you have teachers doing this on other teachers. So it's not judgmental.
Right.
It's not saying you're good or you're bad. It's really a learning tool for the one watching. What is it? The purpose of this is for the teacher who's watching to learn from it.
And I like what it says. What are they doing and what are they saying? Because that's so important. Like you said, not judgmental, but evidence.
Right. And that shows teachers as they're walking through and using, but having this tool and being able to walk through and use them, but to see other teachers and skills that they can use in their classrooms.
What I liked about this one too is that it had both what are the teachers doing and what are the students doing. So you're seeing more of that evidence of like, are they understanding what the teacher's putting down?
But it's a fact-based thing. This happened. The students were doing it's fact-based. It's not, I'm giving you a rating on this. So I definitely think that it's a good learning tool.
Okay. And then this last one is actually from another state, but it is for an elementary setting. So this is more of that domain walkthrough style, kind of like our T-test and DMAC one is. So I want you to just kind of briefly scan that one, and then we'll talk about it.
I like the little check boxes at the top on this one, that's what you're observing in there. Pretty specific.
So like this already takes care of that first thing that you said. It takes off of that domain one and just focuses on what you're going in and observing.
I think it's a lot of the similar, just because I know the rubric for T-test, it's similar to the rubric for T-test, but it's not as,
I like the questioning. So how deep are you going within that lesson?
And I'm assuming that second page is just like a little rubric to kind of clarify it for yourself. So they came together. So, and looking at all three of those, and then comparing that to what we use now, let's talk about just our big takeaways from just observing those. Like, what are some of the things that we liked? What are some of the things that
But we know that we're going to be using the Bluebonnet one because of the new curriculum, and we want to make sure that the teachers are using Bluebonnet with fidelity. So I think that that one's important.
I really do like from the learning walk form, I wish that it was included in, and I know it's not part of the T-test, but it's pretty plain stated, the learning task and learning objective. And what are students doing? Because to me, these go hand in hand. So if I get a walkthrough back and I say, well, the learning objective from Ms. Watson was that they were learning CVC words, you know, but that what they were doing was putting puzzles together at their desk. That's pretty indicative to a teacher that, well, what they were doing is not like applicable to my learning objective.
Right.
You know? And so I think I really like this as part of this. I just think it's easy for a teacher to read through. And to me, that's your biggest piece is what I'm doing and what I'm supposed to be teaching. Are the kids literally doing anything to support that effort?
Right.
Or is it totally misaligned and not helping them in that capacity at all? And I think we struggle with that on campus. I think our teachers sometimes struggle with what we want to do as a teacher, but what we're supposed to be teaching them.
Right.
And so I think that that's an area that we could improve upon.
And I think just looking at scores, you know, how deep do they get in that objective? Did they just skim over it, or are they truly understanding it and comprehending it? Not just surfacing it.
Right. So with all those things in mind, what can we say, or what could we determine what should our walkthrough form capture? When we walk into a classroom, any of us, whether it's y'all doing an actual walkthrough, me, Ms. Roki, anybody else, if we're walking into a classroom, what do we want that form to actually reflect? What is it we want to see when we go in there? That could be better than what we have just from the GMAT one.
Well, I want to be able to tell from the lesson that I've observed for 15 minutes what you're teaching the kids. What is the objective? And what are you having the kids do to support that objective? And the third part of that is, how are you having kids show you that? What is the assessment piece? What's the formative assessment piece you're using before they leave to tell you that you have taught that objective? I think those three of the biggest things that we need to know when we go into an observation. And I think those would help communicate and make our teachers better. I think so too. Before you give them feedback on that. And that's not really a part of this. But if we can get them to do that, then this is just going to improve.
Right.
So.
And if you're seeing those things in the classroom, you've got to be hitting Bluebonnet. You know what I'm saying?
Right, for sure. They should go hand in
Because
hand.
a lot of these are similar to.
This is a quick check, and those quick checks will relate to.
Well, I know what we think as a district, what some of our instructional goals are, but could we elaborate on what we want to see? Like, I know small group is, but I also know that small group is not a requirement or built into Bluebonnet. So we'll have to supplement in those areas.
And they described that to us in our workshop for Bluebonnet, that Bluebonnet is tier 1 instruction. It is solely for tier one, and everybody gets tier one instruction, which is why we are putting that MTSS RTI time into the schedule so that then we can have some tier two instruction, which will be your small group time.
Right.
I think there's still ways to pull a small group with Bluebonnet, I do. But everybody's got to get the same for tier one instruction.
For sure.
And I think for the first year, it's going to be, you've got to experience it first. I think as the years go by, it's going to be a little easier. And ultimately, Bluebonnet's supposed to be strong enough to where you're not going to need as much tier two and tier three interventions. But we've got to start somewhere. So everybody gets the tier one, but we've got to find time for the others.
And we still know that reading is our focus as a district.
We know our math scores have dropped.
I was
so
about to
we've
say, it's got to
got
be
to
an
do it all.
equal.
And that's why we've decided to, per se, rip the Band-Aid off and do all subjects, all grade levels that we to go to Bluebonnet. Yes. And it was the principals that.
Okay. So taking all that in, your input, your thoughts, I am going to turn around and create a form that would kind of better reflect that, and just something that we could use as more of a quick check when we go in that is more indicative of what we want to see. So before we break away, I do want to talk about what our must-haves are. So we want to see the lesson objective on the form, or a space that we can identify that. We want to see the task. What are the students doing? We want to be able to check how they are demonstrating that they understand what they're learning. So like an exit ticket of some sort. Okay. Anything else?
I would just put that as formative assessment. What's the formative assessment that's going to be used? And that's the I will, we will, you will. I mean, and in other districts that I've worked in, those were requirements. Your I will, we will, and you will had to be written, and you had to say them. And if I went and asked the students, what are you learning today? They had to tell me the content that they were learning.
Right.
We haven't had that training, to my knowledge, in Carthage, and we haven't gotten there yet, but it's a very important piece in my view. I think it is a component of Bluebonnet, because I see here lesson objectives are shared with students in an oral and written capacity. And so I think that's going to be part of the Bluebonnet.
And she mentioned that. I wrote that in my notes when we were in Bluebonnet training. That as well.
Yeah. But that formative assessment is your you will, know. And so anyway, I think that those are important.
And we say ditch the planning piece, the domain one.
I would go away from that. I think when you walk into a classroom, your formative assessment is going to tell you if they're achieving expectations. Your communication is going to tell you if you know what the objective is and if your kids know what the objective is. The questioning that you do is the monitor and adjust piece, and then that differentiation. I just think that a lot of that is contained within that instruction piece.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're managing student behavior and classroom culture and all of that. That's your classroom management. But
do we like the format of this Easton Area School District one better than the DMAC one? With it being more of a checklist, or we still like a space to be able to script?
I think it needs to kind of look similar to this, just because that's what they are being evaluated on for the 45-minute. I think you could probably place this in here. I think this could be more of a checklist too. If you go in and look at that rubric and kind of line out the different indicators within the rubric.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
And if you did a checklist, could you include more of what the rubric says?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, just use that proficient column.
Right.
And use that verbiage to check off, because that's really what we're looking for right now.
Okay. I'm going to take all that into consideration. I'll sit down and kind of formulate a new walkthrough form, and then I'll send that out to y'all, and we can tweak it from there.
Perfect.
Sound good?
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Okay. Thank y'all for meeting with me.